when we give of ourselves.
What if the secret to happiness isn't making more money, but giving more of yourself? Today, we're exploring a story that completely flips our modern definition of success on its head.
You know what fascinates me about this? It reminds me of those studies showing that people who volunteer regularly have 40% higher levels of life satisfaction than those who don't.
Well, that's exactly what makes this story of Mr. B so compelling. Here's someone who essentially turned volunteering into his full-time career, and not in some corporate social responsibility way, but by literally driving an ice cream truck and hanging out with neighborhood kids.
That's such an unexpected career pivot. Like, imagine explaining that one to your LinkedIn network. Left executive position to pursue professional ice cream distribution and community joy spreading.
Right? And what's really interesting is how this connects to recent research about career satisfaction. Studies show that around 65% of people feel unfulfilled in their traditional corporate roles. Yet here's Mr. B, who found profound meaning in something society might view as, well, kind of small.
Though from what we understand, his impact was anything but small. Could you talk more about the specific ways he engaged with the community?
So beyond the ice cream truck, which, by the way, parents said was notorious for draining their wallets, he was this constant presence in kids' lives. He'd visit sick children in the hospital, help injured ones, and basically turn everyday moments into adventures.
That reminds me of research from the Harvard Study of Adult Development showing that strong relationships and community connections are actually better predictors of happiness than wealth or achievement.
And you know what's fascinating? The text mentions this ancient wisdom about how a good name is better than silver and gold. It's like Mr. B intuitively understood something that modern science is just now catching up to.
Well, that brings up an interesting question about value creation. In his previous career, he was probably creating shareholder value, but in his new role, he was creating what you might call social value or community capital.
Exactly. And speaking of capital, there's this growing body of research about something called relational wealth. It suggests that the density and quality of our social connections might be a better measure of prosperity than financial metrics.
You know what's striking about Mr. B's approach? He wasn't just doing occasional acts of kindness. He completely restructured his life around this principle of giving.
And that's where the story really challenges our conventional wisdom. We're taught to think about retirement as this time when we finally get to relax and enjoy life, but Mr. B suggests that maybe the most enjoyable life is one spent actively contributing to others' happiness.
Though I imagine some people might hear this and think it sounds exhausting. Constantly giving of yourself, always being there for others.
Well, that's where the prayer at the end becomes so relevant. It's asking to be a channel for love, which suggests it's not about depleting yourself, but about becoming a conduit for something larger.
That's such an important distinction. It's like the difference between seeing giving as a transaction versus seeing it as a flow state.
You know, recent psychological research actually backs this up. Studies show that acts of kindness trigger the release of oxytocin and endorphins, creating what scientists call a helper's high. So in a very real sense, Mr. B might have been experiencing more consistent joy than many high-powered executives.
Well, that certainly puts a new spin on the idea of career advancement, doesn't it?
It really does. And what's particularly relevant right now is how this connects to broader conversations about the Great Resignation and quiet quitting. People are increasingly questioning whether traditional markers of success actually lead to fulfillment.
Though I imagine the practical challenge for most people would be finding a sustainable way to follow Mr. B's example without, completely abandoning their financial responsibilities.
That's where I think the story offers some nuanced wisdom. It's not necessarily about making such a dramatic change, but about recognizing that our capacity for giving, whether that's time, attention, or care, might be our most valuable asset.
And perhaps that's the real takeaway here. that we might need to expand our definition of wealth to include these more intangible forms of richness.
Looking at current trends, this actually aligns with what we're seeing in younger generations. Studies show that Gen Z and millennials are increasingly prioritizing purpose and impact over traditional career advancement.
Though what makes Mr. B's story particularly powerful is that he wasn't just talking about these values. He was living them day in and day out.
And that's really the challenge this story leaves us with. How might our communities transform if more people found ways to channel their talents and energy into direct service to others?
Well, considering the growing evidence linking social connection to everything from mental health to longevity, the impact could be profound.
You know what's particularly striking? The text mentions how the rich and poor meet together in community, suggesting that this kind of giving actually breaks down social barriers and creates more cohesive neighborhoods.
That's something we desperately need right now, isn't it? In an era of increasing polarization and isolation.
Absolutely right. And recent sociological studies show that communities with higher levels of social capital are more resilient during crises, have better health outcomes, and even show improved economic mobility.
So in a way, Mr. B wasn't just spreading joy. He was building community infrastructure.
And maybe that's the most powerful lesson here, that true wealth isn't just about what we have, but about what we create together through giving, through connection, through making our corner of the world a little bit better.
That's really what it comes down to, isn't it? Redefining success, not by what we accumulate, but by what we contribute.
And as we wrap up, I think that's the question worth sitting with. What might change in our own lives if we measured wealth not by our bank accounts, but by the joy we create, the connections we forge, and the love we channel into the world?